Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another episode on immigration and job talk show, daily immigration shows, Monday to 4 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you. We are streaming live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on X. And before we move on with today's discussion, I have this disclaimer. By watching our videos, you understand that the information shared, including user comments, is not personal advice. Use at your own risk. Our intention is never to offend, it's just a casual exchange of ideas. And friends out there, I'm really very excited for today's discussion. And today's topic is how do immigration frauds happen? A look at real cases. And I'm even more excited because we just had a show sometime back with immigration attorney John Q. Khosravi, all the way from Los Angeles, and so excited that he's so kind to join us once again. So, without further ado, please help me welcome him back to our show. Hi, John. Thank you again for joining us.
Pleasure speaking earlier. I'm glad we got a bigger crew here and we could talk some more about U.S. immigration law.
Absolutely. And this is Sam, my co host. Hi, Sam.
Hi,
I hope you're
Napasa.
excited
Hi,
too.
John. Welcome again to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. It's literally a pleasure, having you in such a short notice. And we are really excited for today's episode. And I think, yeah, today we are really, going to talk about how do immigration frauds happen and with some real case also. So I think, yeah, let's begin now. John, firstly, we would like to know about your point of view. Any advice that you would like to share with the immigrants who actually got caught during these fraudulent activities? How can they get safe from these pitfalls?
Sure. I mean, there's different levels of fraud that happens in the immigration process. I mean, one of them, for example, is people giving false promises. There's even people that make fake profiles on me on Facebook and WhatsApp and reach out to people and say, "Hey, I can fix your case. Pay me $2,000." They pay it, and then nothing happens. Then they do their research and realize it wasn't me. And so it's like, do your research on what the person who's telling you what the law is, if it really is the law, if it's consistent with what you find online. Is the person really a lawyer? Do they have responsibility? There'll be people who are not lawyers. They'll say, listen, I do fill out the forms all the time. But they don't have responsibility. If they make mistakes, even, they're not even doing fraud. They make a mistake, they could just say, well, sorry. But if I make a mistake, my license is on the line. So there's much more responsibility on my hand. That's why we charge more, is because our livelihood's over if we make mistakes. So that's one end. And then on the other side, there's people who make false promises for jobs. You come here, you work here, and that leads to all sorts of abuse and misuse of people. So you got to see a lot of it is research the laws and make sure it's something that makes sense. And sometimes you can tell it's fraud. There was a big scam going on that the government was doing to see who was doing like student visa, work visa fraud. So they made up a school, and people would call in and want to work for the school. A lot of people in South Asia got caught up in this, and the people at the school say, "Listen, you don't need to show up. Just pay us money every month, and you could just say you're a student visa holder, come and hang out in America." And a bunch of people did that, and then it turned out they were government officers or agents that were on the other side. And a big lawsuit came about this because they said the government was entrapping people. They eventually the government lost, but after 2 or 3 years, and all these students, some of them thought it was real classes, would show up to the classes. They got caught up in it, and it just became hell for those people. If something's too good to be true, don't do it. Unless, I mean, just generally don't do it. There's a lot of asylum fraud. People say, okay, just say this and you get asylum. It's not that easy. The government's strict on these. We have Trump administration coming, so they're going to be more hardcore on it. So the number one thing is
Mhm.
something's good to be true. It probably is. And do your own research. Sometimes people are not even doing fraud, but they don't know what they're doing. That's the main thing of it. And they make mistakes. So it's good. I don't mind when my clients come and say, hey, I saw this. What do you think? A lot of lawyers will get annoyed if their clients start talking to them, tell them what the law is, but I'm open. You could always learn something or help educate them on what the correct way is. It makes me look better when I correct say, oh no, that lawyer's wrong. This is what the law is. It makes me look better, if anything. So I don't mind spending the extra time with my clients and do that. But it's just you got to protect yourself, and they got the number one person to protect you is yourself. So don't trust anybody. So you don't have to.
Absolutely. And it's so true in today's world. It's so hard to trust anyone, right? But
Yeah, it's really
I
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, John, I would like to know if you have any cases that you would like to tell us if some of these fraudulent, fraud cases which you had to deal with in your time as an immigration attorney.
Sure. So, one of the things we have a consultation first, and that one of the main goals I don't tell the clients, but the meeting is so I could weed out fraudulent ones. Like I've had couples come to me and I'm looking at them, they're going to get a marriage green card. I'm like, they just no way these people are really a couple. They look like nothing. There's no affection. It's just really fishy. And I'm like, you know what? I just can't do it. I don't know if I could get your immigration card to trust your case because I don't believe it. Like, sometimes I'll say it directly like that. Sometimes I'll find some other excuse. But that's the number one line of defense is trying to stop that. So, because if I'm one is they got to protect them, but also if I start submitting a fraudulent case to the government, they're going to start saying, "Oh, John's the guy who's always having fraud cases." But I know when they look at my name, they know
Right.
like I'm the first line of defense for preventing fraud from happening. So that's what we do. But sometimes people come to me and they did fraud, and there's different levels of fraud. Like for marriage fraud, it's one of the worst because if you do marriage fraud, they kind of ban you forever. But there's other sorts of frauds that people find themselves into by accident. For example, if you're going to get a tourist visa to come and visit the United States, a lot of times people give it to their travel agent or their cousin to fill out the form. And the cousin just makes some stuff up just to get it done because it's like, oh, it's a basic form, this and that. And for example, they don't list their work history properly. They just because they get done faster, they just say I did one job, but the person maybe had 4 jobs or something like that. Tech companies, but they listed only one of them. Now, fast forward 4, 5, 10 years, they find a job in the U.S. They want to get them a work visa, and then they give a resume to the government of their work history. And the government says, well, in the other application, you only said you had one job. Now you're telling us you had like these 3 job history. So you were lying to us in the old application, or you're lying to us now. And they get caught up in fraud then. And it's like, no, it was an honest mistake. They just were lazy and they didn't fill out their own form. Then the term fraud hits them. And unless there's ability to get a waiver, which unless you have, you're married to a U.S. citizen or green card holder, your parents are U.S. citizen, it's hard to get this fraud off. To get a green card, there are waivers for work visas, but those are hard too. They can take a year to get approved, cost a lot of money, and it's not clear whether to be approved. So there's overt fraud of people just scamming or the government and trying to get a green card. But there's mistakes that happen. It could be someone had like an arrest in their past. They forgot about it. They fill out a visa application, came, and then later on they want to file for a marriage green card. And they list the arrest that they had. And the government's like, oh, you didn't tell us the last time. So you did fraud or misrepresentation. You're subject to a ban unless you submit a waiver. And if it's a marriage case, it was called a 601 waiver they could do. But 601 waivers is taking 3 to 5 years to be adjudicated. So it's
Mhm.
like the case just got $10,000, $15,000 more expensive. This is going to, instead of taking 2 years, going to take 6 years, and we don't know if it's going to get approved at the end of the day. So there's really easy ways people get themselves caught up in fraud when it's completely unintentional. And the U.S. government's just going to say, well, we look at the worst way possible. We're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And so even the simple applications in immigration are very risky. Things like tourist visas or basic stuff, they can really come back and hit you really hard.
Mhm.
Immigration is really strict here. It's just really hardcore.
Whoa. Scary,
Yeah.
and thank you so much, John. Yes. And also, if you could, maybe in your experience, if you could tell us what are these red flags that indicate there could be an immigration case that could be fraudulent, and maybe if you could recommend some steps to not fall victim to these kinds of, red flags.
Yeah, when it comes to hiring someone to help you, definitely do the research online. We make it so that we always have our meetings and consultations by video so that people could see me. Because on the phone, anyone can say they're John Kasravi. Now with the artificial intelligence, it seems like people are going to be able to get my video and act like they're like me and talk and it'll look at me. So that's going to be a new thing itself. But one
Yes.
is just getting good advice. But also reviewing all your paperwork. People always sign, even my own clients. I'm like, read what I'm giving you before you sign it. They don't bother signing it, and then later on they're like, oh yeah, I this or you said this in the forms but it's different. I'm like, why didn't you tell me before? Why are you telling me now? Why didn't you read it? It's hard because forms are a lot. If people don't feel like it, they want to pay you and forget about it, but you got to read everything you sign. You got to pay attention to it because the goal is to go through this immigration department only one they process once in your life and not have to do it again and have to deal with all this stuff. So that's the thing. Read your stuff, be aware of what's in there, and if something seems too good to be true, then it probably is. So everything is delayed. Anyone promising is going to get anything done fast in immigration, unless it's very few types of cases. For me, fast is 6, 12, or 18 months. That's fast. So, which is for regular people, that's crazy. But like normal timelines in immigration are 2 to 5 years, how long things take. So 6 to 18 months is fast in immigration world. But that's the thing. Be mindful of the things that are too good to be true and read what you're signing. Make sure it's correct. And sometimes people, there's two ways to do it. Sometimes they want to hide stuff because they're afraid it's bad, and a lot of times it's not, but by hiding it becomes a problem. And on the other end, people start saying too much, so they want to apply for a tourist visa, and then but they're afraid that like they're not going to get it, so they make up a bunch of stuff to like, oh, I'm married or and I have a house here and this and that, so the government thinks like, okay, they have more reason to go back home after they visit the United States, because the number one reason for tourist visa denials is that the government's afraid, that the U.S. government, that you're going to come to U.S. and not go back home. So they'll add all this story about work and life and houses and all this kind of stuff. Well, you may not get, that's fraud at the end of the day. So that's going to be with you. So that's the thing. Like, don't try to be too smart about it. Don't try to be, too shady, or do some things like that's gonna help you. And be careful what you
Mhm.
listen to and read what you sign. That's a it's pretty simple stuff, but millions of people have problems with this.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you so much, John, for your detailed explanation, and we are literally loving it. But John, also I would like to know your point of view that, according to in 2019 data, if we take of 2019 data alone, then the U.S. government investigated over 9,000 cases of immigration fraud, and that's a huge number. So we can see that 9,000 immigration fraud cases have been identified. But according to me, I feel that if there will be some stricter immigration rules, then also we can reduce the fraudulent activities related to immigration. So I also think that the imprisonment. If we talk about the legal consequences, then there are different categories like marriage. Sham marriages, if they get caught, then they
Yeah.
have almost 10 years 10 years imprisonment, right? And
Hmm.
the visa cases, they have 5 years or 6 years imprisonment, right? So what are your call on this? Do you think if the imprisonment time duration will increase, or if the legal consequences will increase, then we can see some less immigration frauds in upcoming years?
Probably not. I don't think people even know what the consequences for are. They're just happy to get the document. And to put those numbers in perspective, though, there's like a million plus cases every year. So 6,000 is actually, most of the fraud just gets by. And they don't have the resources to even look at it. So, like for example, if they think a marriage case is fraud, it takes probably sometimes 2 or 3 years for the officer who's in charge of investigating to even go investigate it. So people come to me, they did a marriage green card interview and the case on hold. And then a year or two later, they contact me and say, my case has been moving forward. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm like, oh, they're doing an investigation, but they don't have enough officers. So it'll probably be another year till it gets assigned to somebody. And then that person comes to your house and asks your neighbors if they've seen you, which is kind of crazy because 3 years have gone on. A lot of times people get divorced. I had one case where one of the spouses died in the meantime. And the officer came and started asking around, and all the neighbors were like, well, we don't know this guy. So they deny the case for fraud. They say, "Oh, none of your neighbors knows this guy." And we're like, "What do you mean? We told you the guy died. He's not." That's why no one knows. All the new neighbors that never met him before. But I've seen a lot of mistaken fraud investigations for like people who just didn't answer questions well, but then the real fraud just sailed by. So the machinery, it's just kind of hard to tell who's really doing fraud unless they really get into your life and come to your house and stuff. And it's hard to make that decision of who to go into the house. And also, just they don't have the resources. They barely have enough to make things going. The immigration court just doesn't have enough money, enough training. The people are job dissatisfied there. So I'm not sure there's any way to curtail the fraud because it's just so much demand to come here, the opportunities that exist here. And so uh, I don't really see any solution to it. They've tried all these different, they made the process extremely complicated for people that are legitimate, which is most cases. So they have to spend a bunch of money and wait extra years to deal with something, but it hasn't fixed things. For example, in the 1980s in America, there's this movie that got really famous of this. It was about a guy who married a woman for getting a green card. And so it was a comedy movie, but it got really famous. But then people started talking, saying, "Oh, all these people are getting married for fraud." So what they did is they updated the laws. They said if like I get married and soon after get a green card within 2 years of getting married, the green card I get is only valid for 2 years. After 2 years, I got to submit another application to again prove my relationship is real. Now, there was a recent analysis by the government itself, a group called the USCIS Ombudsman, and they said the rate of catching fraud in the second application is like 0.01%. It's so insignificant that the amount of resources and delays and costs is bringing the system is completely unnecessary. But now that is the law, it's very difficult. And what has happened is to be able to keep the green card for 2 years, you got to show the relationship is real. You can still get divorced and just explain to the government, but I'm constantly finding usually it's women women who are in extremely abusive relationships. The husband's literally beating him up every day, really bad, but they're afraid of getting a divorce because they're afraid they're going to lose the green card. It was a legitimate marriage. It was just a bad marriage, like many people have, unfortunately. And then all of a sudden they're stuck in this system. They're getting abused, beat up. I just want to cry sometimes when women are telling me this stuff. But they're like, I don't want to get divorced. I'm like, there's a waiver for that. There's an abusive spouse waiver. You just keep your green card. It's fine. They're like, no, I don't want to do it. I'm going to wait to get the green card. Maybe even wait till I get citizenship. When it's just done, I'll do it. And so it's like, it has they weren't able to catch much fraud, but on the other end, it's hurting people themselves. So it's one of those things in life. How do we get our children to not lie to us? How do we get our neighbors not to steal my mail or something like that? It's like I don't really know how any of this is really possible, other than just being more astute when it comes to reviewing their documents and the fraud. If we do interviews, officers just be more competent. But I don't really have a solution to catching the fraud. Frankly, it's the most of the time the people who get caught up in fraud are people who are honest, but they just don't know what they're doing. And then the ones who are
Right.
good at fraud, they're just getting well, they know what to do, so they're getting away. So it's the honest people that get messed up, and the ones that are evil, like they get away.
Right. Right. But for the victims, is there anything that, that they can help themselves, whether it is whether they are students who maybe got caught in some fraudulent, maybe, scams where there was
Yeah.
no real school. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes there is. It costs money. Sometimes you got to get like lawyers to sue them and this and that, which is very costly. Sometimes the scams will be so big. Some law firms will come and do group lawsuits to kind of solve it. But there's other
Mhm.
scams, like there's people who, this is a terrible scam. Like this happens a lot for like South Korea, for example. They tell women, "Oh, we found you a job in the United States. Come and work for 6 months, and then get a bunch of money, go back home." As soon as they come here, they take their passports away and force them into prostitution, into undercover places. They're really horrible things. This is thousands and thousands of women, tens of thousands of women have this situation. So there's a special
Whoa.
visa called the T visa for people that are victims of human trafficking like that. So they could, even though there was fraud involved in how they came here and that they were doing it, they could still get that fixed and even get a green card. There's a U visa, victims of serious crimes. It could be big fraud and stuff like that. But for the more simpler stuff, it's hard. It's hard to do anything other than just leave and lose out on the money and everything, and may not be able to come back. There's just so many different types of fraud that happen, but most of them you kind of just lose, and that's it.
Mhm. Well, you were talking about the movie. Do you remember the name of the movie?
I think it was just called Green Card. I'll look it up right now. Let's see, Green Card movie. Let's see, fake marriage. I'll look it up on Google as we're talking. But I go
But
back to
there
watch
are a
movies
couple
when
of
I was a kid.
movies like that. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's called Green Card, a 1990 comedy romance, and that's fun. When the law that passed was called I am something. Let's see, I-751 INA. So it's right around that time afterward this law passed. It's gonna take too long for me to research, but IMFFA, I think it's called IMFFA, IMFFA or something like that. But essentially, it was like a way to prevent marriage fraud. So they have the secondary review they do of new marriage cases only. So and yeah, that's a big part of my business is helping people through that process because the government only has like 10 officers doing something that has like a million cases. So instead of the process
Mhm.
for that taking like 6 months, it's taking like 3 years. And it's just like people are like, why is it not getting approved? I'm waiting and waiting. I'm like, yeah, they're just backed up and it's just getting worse and worse. You got to wait all these years to get your green card renewed.
Right, right. So do you think if we got more officers, there would be, lesser wait times or backlogs would be less by any
I
chance?
mean, in a rational world,
I
yes.
wish.
But the problem is you got immigration law is so complicated that it takes years for someone to fully understand immigration law, even lawyers or whatever. And I have a incentive to learn the law because I'll make more money if I do. I'm more successful. For the officers, if they don't know it, it's whatever. And so it takes them longer. A lot of them then quit, and you got to get new people in and get into it. And it's so just throwing money and people at it doesn't solve it. It's just like just an annoying job. I don't know. Like in America, we keep saying like education system is really getting terrible here, and it's like, oh, we need more money. We need more money. Then they do studies. The schools that get the most money have the worst results. So it's there's no solution. I can't find any solution. I'm not gonna get any help.
It's crazy how the world has turned out to be, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, would you like to take up some of these questions? And before we take those questions, folks out there, you can join us on this discussion by just calling us on this number 425 436 6335, and the access code is 988888. And just say hello after that. We will be able to hear you. And John is here, so you may get lucky. If you join us now, you can ask him your question. Well, would you like to take Neela's question on YouTube? Neela's asking, what are some of the most common tactics used by people trying to deceive immigration authorities with fraudulent documents, and how do officials usually catch these discrepancies?
Sure. I mean, a
Okay.
lot of times, the fraud that's caught is by companies that are doing this in mass. So they'll like, it's kind of crazy. There was a case where this person probably did this to thousands of cases, but they would have a photo studio in their office with a backlot of like Hawaii, and people would come and stand there in the same pose, and they'll just redo the same fake documents, but keep changing the name. So government starts seeing they have like exactly the same packets, just different names constantly coming in from this or area. So the thing gets caught. But a lot of it is the documents have certain errors on them that they catch. It doesn't make any sense. The relationship history, timelines, the people don't look to make sense. But it's hard. It probably sometimes a lot of times when it's organized activities, they catch it because there's just too much. This things, the same documents coming over and over again. They catch it. But I'm not. It's not my specialty to catch this kind of fraud. I mean, I just talk with people and I can say, oh, it's rare. Big picture of things. The grand number of people that are getting green cards, visas, a very small number are fraud. So most of the time, you just don't run into it, especially for what I do. But it's there. Most of the time, people are just not very competent, so it comes off. You could pretty easily tell if it's fraud happening, just because they don't answer questions right. There's something doesn't make sense, and like the story or the paperwork doesn't make sense, or you just kind of get caught on it pretty easily if you get a chance to
Mhm.
talk.
Thank you for taking that up for Neela. And Sam, do you have anything to ask John?
Yeah, I think I have a question, John, and I would like to specifically talk about the fake job offers. That there are lots of scams that we see
Yeah.
related to fake job offers, and also,
Yeah.
there was a case from 2020 when ICE uncovered a widespread scam that was actually targeting foreign workers, and fraudsters were selling fake job offers to individuals so that they were hoping to secure H-1B work visas. So they
Yeah.
created a fake company website and forged job offer letters and also tell the workers that they had secured the legitimate work visas. But these are the things which are very easy to make. I mean, anyone can easily get entrapped into this. So I want to know your advice on this. That how can one understand that whether this company is a legitimate one or is it just a scam?
Well, one of the main things is the immigration laws don't allow the foreign national to pay for the legal work related to the government fees for most of it, the attorney fees for the most of it, and so it should be the company paying it. So they're asking you to pay, then and it's like they're trying to do you a favor. Then it's probably fake. So that's the thing. So a lot of times people contact me and say, no, I'm hired by this company. I want to hire you to do the work. I'm like, well, you're the beneficiary. You're the applicant. You can't pay me to do this work. It has to be the company. The government essentially set it up. So if something's happening, it's not necessarily always fake, because sometimes companies will be like, we'll do a favor. We'll do the green card process, but we don't want to pay for it. So they'll ask the person to pay. As a lawyer, I'm not allowed to accept that case. But a lot of lawyers may do, or they're just, the company says, okay, I'll pay it. And behind the scenes, they'll pay the employee. A lot of shenanigans like that happen. But again, it seems too good to be true. It is. I mean, if a company's coming to find you out of nowhere and say, okay, give us $20,000, and we'll figure it out for you. And it's like, well, it's like, are they running a business that's providing services, or are they just running an immigration racket? And if they are, frankly, a lot of times they probably do get approved. Even if it's fraud, it goes through, but it could get caught anytime. There's sometimes where they don't find out, but 10 or 15 years later, the government catches on. They come back and say, okay, we found this scam that happened. You're on the call list of the people that did it. And so that's going to be a problem. And they come back and take your green card away and stuff like that. Stuff does happen. But in the total numbers of things, they don't have the resources to really chase anything down. Usually, the foreign national just loses out on money for paying this company. The company doesn't do anything.
Right, right. And even recently, we found Infosys preferring, I mean, employers from India, right? And I mean, they were not taking up Americans, even though they were qualified for the jobs.
Yeah, there's
and
a
that
couple
came
of
up
these
on the news
companies
as
that
well.
just run this. Their whole business plan is bringing, Indian engineers to the U.S. and using the H-1B system. There's like 4 or 5 companies use up like this. We use up all the H-1B numbers, and almost all the
Right.
H-1B visas are from India. And they're making billions. I mean, I think the son-in-law of
Exactly.
one of those companies was the Prime Minister of England, and these guys are making money off this. And there, in America, it's a controversy, the H-1B visa, because they're bringing foreign employers, and some people are misusing it. The H-1B visas, for companies to bring employees here, but there's a few companies taking all of them. And so they keep wanting to shut down the program, but it's really easy to catch what's going on here. There's just a couple of big companies who suck up most of them, and then randomly there'll be one-off companies, small companies that want to use this program, but they can't because these big companies are taking all the visas. So if they want to, there are ways to fix this stuff. They have enough, AI and computer analytics to catch this stuff. But there's people are getting paid off it, so the money's going somewhere, and so it's no incentive other than complaining about it to make it a political issue. It just doesn't. No, everyone's. I think it's usual. They're like everywhere in the world. They just keep it going.
So true, so true.
Hi,
So,
John. I was listening to the three of you, and you guys are having a great conversation. So I thought of joining this conversation and thought of asking this question. So, John, I actually want to start this conversation by asking a very political question. How happy or sad were you when Trump won? you know,
Most
because people were not
immigration
expecting that. Uh-huh.
Most immigration lawyers are just crying and having a terrible time. I kind of
Uh-huh.
am been burned by being involved in politics, so I just kind of take things as they are day by day. And so I try not to let these things. I just there's all sorts of tomorrow I could wake up and my leg could hurt. So I just look at it as like, okay, just another day. I got to deal with what's happening in the world. It's more personal, psychological thing I do, and I just pray to God, and that's all. I say, God, to give me another day, and I'll do my job and keep forward. So I don't get myself too mentally or emotionally riled up with politics. I don't. One thing in America, people get really angry when I say, so I'm a born citizen here. I was born here, but I don't even
Mhm.
participate in the voting process. I don't have enough respect for it to want to vote even. So I'm like, okay, this is the guy they gave us. Last guy who came was supposed to be peace, got into this war. So
Mhm.
I mean, how much worse could it be? And just for immigration, it's pretty bad. Last time around, it made my job really hard. But it's just that's life. My job is a great job to help people, and I'm not digging ditches or struggling. So it is what it is. We just go, and the people of America voted for it. So I mean, they have a right to. Not everyone likes immigrants in America, and I don't believe in that kind of thinking, but that they're living here in the same country as I am, so they have a right to make a decision and have a perspective too. Even though I don't agree with it, so I personally, it's just my mentality is I just let go by day on this stuff. But most immigration attorneys were just distraught, completely distraught after the decision.
Right, because there were a lot of immigrants who joined our show, and we did speak with them also. And while we were having a conversation with them, while we were talking with them, some of them were very really happy. I'm talking about the immigrants, and not just the
Mhm.
immigrants from India or
Sure.
a particular country, but also there were immigrants from who joined us from Nigeria and other countries too. So even they were happy with Trump coming back because maybe they are thinking about that they are going to get a lot of opportunities, and a lot of opportunities is going to open up for them, and the market is going to be stable, and the inflation will be better, and economy will be better, so things like that. So
Sure.
we were having this conversation. So I want to know, do you think it's actually going to be better for, I mean, you must be having a completely different take as an immigration attorney, but what do you think, is it going to be good for immigrants who are looking for more job opportunities?
It's really hard to say. I mean, there's bigger things that are happening in the economy. I mean, the
Mhm.
U.S. is just printing money like crazy, and what they're doing with Russia and dealing with China. So there's like bigger macro mistakes that are being made. Um, it's really hard to see because of how much power does the president really have over the economy. So I don't think. I just look at long-term trends. Unless the Americans, each individual American, gets his act together and stops like just living off watching TV and borrowing money and eating too much and all this kind of stuff. Unless they get their act together, the world's going to be very competitive. So whoever the
Mhm.
president is, there's people all over the world, China, India, Russia, Iran, Brazil, becoming more competitive and they have access to the internet. So it's
Mhm.
leveling the playing field. So the bigger thing is just people, it's been very easy in America to make money because we could just print it wherever else has to work. But those
Mhm.
days be coming to head. If that happens, it's going to be competitive. So whoever the president is doesn't won't matter. It's just you got to be you got to be working hard, and that's affects me. I know it's like I got to be a better immigration attorney. I got to get my message out better, do better marketing, do better work, better service. Be how much our costs our offices, find like the best rates or all this kind of stuff. So I just look at it as that everyone's got to work hard, and we've had it pretty easy here and comfortable. And those things, it's not good being too comfortable. It makes you lazy. So that's pretty much what's happening here.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. But John, also I would like to know from you, what do you think about this? I mean, since we were discussing H1B, not H1B, but visa frauds. So that reminds
Mhm.
me of lottery, which is not exactly a fraud, but it is like preferring someone else over the other based
Luck.
on the luck factor, right?
Yes.
So if you're lucky enough that you will get the opportunity to get into the US, and if you're not lucky enough, you will not be approved and you will not get a chance to enter the country. What do you think about this system? Don't you think this is um, not exactly how it should be?
Oh, it's a
And
terrible system. Yeah,
uh
it doesn't make any sense. It's when I have to explain the system to the people, they're like, "What? That's the system America has." One of the biggest problems America has in immigration is with people from the Hollywood movies and all this kind of stuff. They think America is really efficient, really well run, and then once they go through the immigration
and if
process.
aliens ever land, they're going to land first in America, right?
Yeah, yeah, but they lose massive respect to see how badly it's run, how like it nothing never makes sense, the delays, the mistakes, and like, well, this is America, this is Department of Homeland Security running operations like this. Wow, like what kind of security does this country have if this is because immigration is not Department of Homeland Security? If they're running this system so badly and so incoherently, immediately it makes us look bad. It's like the first impression becomes really bad for our country. So, but no one's trying to fix it, so that is a problem.
Right. So
And the whole world is so fascinated with America.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Hollywood. I mean, it's less and less now with everyone having their own movie industry in Turkey and India, and everyone has special effects. So it's the things that in the military and the cultural control we had of the world is really diminishing. We're shooting ourselves in the foot a lot. It still takes a while. Even Rome took hundreds of years to fall, so it'll still take a while unless we get our act together here. But the shine is wearing off. Like it looks like turning into a used car. It's a really brand new Ferrari. It's starting to become like scratched and the color's fading. And unless we get a paint job or rebuild that engine, who knows? Elon Musk is working hard to do it. Hopefully he could do something. But in my job and my family is to try to teach my family this and hold myself to these higher standards and talk to my clients about it and people like this on the show, whoever watching. It's an open game right now. If you're sharp and you have the internet anywhere in the world, you're going to have some opportunity. So there's a plus to it as well. That's those who are engaged could do it, but it's more competitive than ever.
yeah, but John, do you really think that more than anything else, the movies has a big part to play in Project America? How people
Yeah.
are actually perceiving it?
Big time. There was a big fraud. Even me, I grew up here culturally. Now I'm 40 years old and I have children. And now I look back at the culture that I was raised in America and what was important, what was not. And I saw just really worthless stuff was of value when I was younger and spending my time chasing after this or chasing after that. Where now I realize I wasted my time and what I thought was important was not. And a lot of the Hollywood movies reflected that and that I grew up and even like rap music. I used to listen to a lot of rap music until I started when I was in my mid 30s, started listening. I'm like, these lyrics are garbage. And I guess like saying the horrible things about crime and treating people and treating women. And I was sing along and it was very cool. Snoop Dogg, this guy, now he's in America. Snoop Dogg is the rapper. He's all famous. But this guy, when I was in my 20s, he was having women with dog chains and then he said, I'm a pimp and these are my prostitutes. And like, this is garbage. This is American culture. Like, this is embarrassing to have this as representative of who we are. But that was big. And even now they're putting this guy on TV at the Olympics. And so it's like, maybe it's better this culture goes away if this is what we're teaching in America. People aren't having kids. I have 3 kids, but people see people with kids, they look at them like we're like weird or something like that. And nobody has good relationships. Men and women can't even get together anymore and have relationships. If this is the fruit of the culture, then yeah, it's terrible, and hopefully we could change it. If we don't, we're going to commit suicide here. What we're doing.
But yeah, but do you, I mean, what you mentioned here is, I think is very true and very accurate. But do you think this is the reason why the Democrats also endorsed? I mean, a lot of people were endorsing Trump, but then Democrats they were being endorsed by
The
Taylor
celebrities.
Swift. Yeah, these celebrities. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, it works. I mean, it used to work. It didn't work this year. It used
Do
to
you think
work.
because of this obsession around people and this obsession with Hollywood and everything,
Yeah.
this is the reason why the celebrities were endorsing and they were getting the celebrities and paying them in millions and getting them in stage and asking them to actually say good things about them
But
so
it
that
didn't
people
work.
can
It
come.
didn't work. They
Yeah,
spent
yeah.
billions of dollars on it. It didn't work. So that's a positive that people
Hmm.
are finally waking up. It's probably because of the internet. People see through the nonsense now.
Hmm.
They'll find a new way to do the propaganda pretty soon. But for
Right.
now, it's kind of good because who are these celebrities? Like some losers who like they may be good at playing a song or something like that, but what do they know about what's good for whoever? They barely can run their own lives. So people are seeing what this is, and it's getting better. Not optimistic too much on that end. I mean, like they'll always find a new soccer team that is going to say something, or some famous athlete's going to say. People, it just the masses of people are always going to make these kind of mistakes and stuff. So the best thing to do is, just focus on my family and my neighbors, and then when I'm here, just be honest. What I'm saying probably is going to offend a lot of people. It probably has offended a lot of people. But this is the best truth at my age I could do, and hopefully my kids see this in the future. They'll see this recording. They'll say, "Okay, my dad realized his mistakes when he was younger, but doesn't repeat it." But
Hmm.
we have whole religious texts that tell us 10,000 years ago, 2,000 ago, people were making these same mistakes and then do it over again and do it over again. So that's why it's just how humanity is built. Is hopefully we don't blow ourselves up with some atomic weapons and we keep it going. But this is nothing new in the grand scheme of things. If we look at all these old books, this is the same stuff over again.
You are actually mentioning these movies quite a lot. So I'm sure you must be watching and you must have watched a lot of movies. So can you recommend some like good movies which are actually worth watching to our audience and
I
viewers?
stopped. I would say don't watch anything other than educational material on YouTube. I stopped watching about when I was like 20, about 10 or 15 years. When I was like 25-ish, I stopped watching anything that's entertainment. I get stuck on TikTok a lot. The TikTok's pretty good, but don't watch any entertainment. Only if only thing that can make you better, like is if it's educational or grow. But any of these movies nowadays, most of it's garbage anyways. Back in the day, they had movies where you watch and you'd sometimes like have a internal understanding better of things, and you
You
get
can
to know.
recommend from back in the day. I mean, that's okay. You don't have to recommend anything
It's hard. I
latest. You
mean,
can
there's
recommend.
The Matrix was good. The Godfather movie was really good. So these are really good, but you got to have the eyes to see it too. Sometimes people watch stuff for entertainment; they don't get the deeper aspects of it. But a good old book is always well read back in the day. Read the Bible, read these books. Even if you don't believe in it, if it's been around for thousands of years, there's something in there that is deep, and so there's some truth you got to investigate. I definitely I'd recommend doing that kind of stuff. But those who have the eyes to see and ears to hear will find it on their own. And internet's there. You just it's easy to find nowadays. It's just back 100 years ago, it's very hard to find information. But when like that's why we had great scientists who did, because they have to work really hard to get it. Now we have all this information that we get at a tip of our fingers, and we have like no new stuff coming out. I mean, we had the iPhone that came out 20 years ago. That's about it. So yeah, the tech here is good, and AI is coming. That's going to be interesting. But for the most part, people like we don't have any groundbreaking Edisons and Einsteins and this kind of stuff coming out. The harder it is it makes it's better because people work harder for it. If it's too easy, nothing comes about.
So
Right.
true, so true.
Yeah, John. Also, I want to ask you this question. Recently there were talks about, because we was talking about these frauds happening, right? So there were these talks about Elon himself not being from not being an American citizen, and actually because
You have
his
the
brother
immigration
actually,
issue.
yeah, there was an immigration issue. Where his brother said that they did a scam or fraud, something like that. They were talking about that, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of a big controversy that happened around it. So. So, do you think that like big celebrities and huge figures like Elon or these people, they also do something like this, and they also get into scams and then get into the country? Have you heard of
I
cases
didn't
like these?
yeah, I didn't research that specific Elon situation, but I've seen
Mhm.
celebrities who are well known for having like drug problems and being arrested and stuff. They're still here and they're getting green card and citizenship. So I was like, well, how did that person come? Because, for example, there was the son of the King of England came here, and in his book he admitted to doing drugs, and that's a
Oh.
ban right there. But he got in. So you have money and power, he'll figure out a way. They'll just let it slide, it seems. But I mean, I don't know his specific case. Might have got a waiver. Might have. I don't know what they did, but there's good enough times where celebrities I'm seeing who are well known for being like drug users and being arrested, they still get status. And I'm like, well, how did that happen? There's a ban on if you're that belligerent with the drugs. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff goes through the government. That's a slide.
But do you think the government also supports them just because they are that huge?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we see these scandals come out with Jeffrey Epstein, all these people.
Yeah.
Maybe they say, hey, listen, we'll give you status,
I
but when we
actually,
need
I
something,
actually didn't want to take the name, but thank you that you mentioned this.
yeah. So who knows? Maybe say, listen, we'll give you the status, but when we need you, you come and endorse this person. Then they go and endorse the president, whoever elected. So that's how it works. It's just the pay to play, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about these asylum frauds? Because, people claim asylum to run away from the country, or
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, uh, things what they say are also true, but sometimes they mostly want to run away from their country because they committed crimes there, and then they want to settle in another country. So what about that? Just because they have enough money, they try to get into another country, and the government also supports that. Have you heard of cases like that where people have sought asylum and
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, the numbers of asylum filings have just like gone like 2 to 4 to 8, 16 exponentially are getting bigger in the last 15 years. And a lot of them just give it a shot. Just go file asylum, see what happens, because it could give you temporary ability to work in the U.S. and wait for a court hearing. And the court hearings could take 10 years. So that gives you opportunity to be here in the
yeah?
meantime. But I mean, there's a lot of people with legitimate asylum claims. But then, I mean, there was arrested some company in New York who was just like making up a bunch of asylum claims for people and getting approved until it took like 15 years for them to get caught. So there's a lot of it. That's why the asylum process is so hard, and they ask so many questions to try to catch this. But the problem is, there's people with legitimate asylum. So imagine if you are doing asylum in the U.S. and you've been heavily abused. You're going to get interviewed and they'll grill you and ask you a bunch of stuff. So, okay, so who was the person that abused you like this, and how did they abuse you? What did they do? And the person is like, they have to remember being raped and tortured and stuff like that. And the person doesn't even want to talk about it, so they might not even mention it. And they'll say, okay, you're doing
Yeah.
asylum fraud. And the person's like, no, I'm not doing fraud. I try to not think about this ever again because it was so bad. So then it's what we talked about at the beginning. The person who really is asylum but just having a hard time dealing with it and talking about it, or has a mental block, can't answer right, and they get denied. And the person just memorize what to say and could say it because it's like, okay, I'll just memorize a script like an actor, and they get it in. So it's really hard. It's a difficult situation.
Right. And I recently stumbled upon this very like weird case where a phony immigration attorney in Florida, he actually filed over 215 fraudulent asylum application. It actually was looking like as if he was auditioning for Law and Order. But but coming back to the question, I want to know that how to identify these immigration attorneys who actually commit these crimes, and also are not being caught by the government or by the law,
Yeah,
because
it's
they
one
themselves are
within.
practicing the law, right? So how do one get it?
Well, one thing a lot of our immigration lawyers cause when we talk is like there'll be people doing widespread fraud and nothing happens, and then we make an honest mistake and they come after us and the government. So it's just really bizarre how like the big people do massive fraud, nothing happens, and everyone knows like this guy's finding out like these cases don't make any sense because they'll come to my office and I'll look at the case. I'm like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. But nothing happens to him, and then I forget to like not me, but like someone forgets a very simple, it makes a mistake, and then they come after him really hard. So yeah, it's a problem that they're not solving. It doesn't look like it's going to be solved anytime soon or at all, really.
But then how can one
Right. And
identify?
How do you identify them?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, for a person who's going to hire them, I mean, they could tell. I mean, the person is being too good to be true. But when it comes to government finding them, I don't know. They got to. I mean, honestly, it's not too hard. They pay attention because you see like one office is doing the same case over and over again. You kind of just see that, okay, the same law firm keeps submitting the same kind of case. Let's pay a little more attention to it. But they get away with it for years. I think government just doesn't have resources or time to look into it.
right. You mentioned about like people pretending to be immigration attorneys and then they take a lot of money and all that. And you were also mentioning to consult about 4 to 5 attorneys and see how different their answers are. And uh, like you said, you refer and say like this person is saying wrong. So maybe things like that could work out, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people want the fraud attorney because they want to commit fraud. But if you have an honest case, you got to talk to different people and see what they say. If it's consistent, if they know what they're talking about. I mean, there'll be times where the law is so complicated that one lawyer will be honest, but they just don't say it wrong or they don't know all the details. Like you might be within this 1.01% exception to the rule, but they just weren't aware of it. I've been doing this for 15 years. I teach it every day. I learn something new that I didn't know yesterday, and it's humbling to be like, damn, I'm supposed to be like a top person in this field, and I didn't know this, but and then there'll be a new guy who knows that one thing, but doesn't know the other things I know. So it's not to say the lawyer's being bad or fraudulent. It's just there's so much you have to know, and it changes every second and every day that it's difficult. That's why getting different opinions. And I've had clients educate me where they say, "Oh, I went to this other lawyer. He said this program exists." And I'm like, "Oh, they just launched this new program that I didn't hear about." Okay, so that's good. That attorney knows it, and I made a mistake. So you got to be humble. Some lawyers don't want to hear it. It's arrogance in there, but I'm like, yeah, if someone's going to educate me, and I'll take it. It might be embarrassing for a client sometimes, but I'd rather know and give honest advice than not.
Right. But John, what is the most, which visa is the most common visa where frauds happen?
I don't know the statistics on that, but obviously marriage fraud, it could be one. Employment-based fraud with documents and H-1Bs, that could be another. Asylum, with the numbers of asylum cases happening, that could be another one. People who are victims of different abuses could be another one, because it leaves a lot of openness to people to make up stuff. I don't have statistics, and it's hard to know because they might catch a lot of one of them, but it doesn't mean that's the most fraud. They might not just catch a lot of the fraud. But I don't know particularly on that to give an exact answer.
But what steps do you think the U.S. government can take, or maybe they should take, which can prevent these fraudulent cases
I
in
don't really
future?
think they're. I don't know. I don't know. I would say they just. I don't know, because every step they do take ends up catching people who are not doing fraud and create problems for them. So I don't think there's a good way to go around it or anything. Unfortunately, I don't have any advice for the government. They have a hard job ahead of them, and I understand the difficulty they're going through. I appreciate how hard it is to weed it out. It's a hard decision, because any decision they make is going to affect people's lives dramatically and their families. So it's a hard decision, and that's why judges have a hard time too, because they got to make really bad decisions. Police officers in the street, they got to make split-second decisions. Sometimes they shoot the wrong person. That's a hard thing to live with. You shot someone by accident because you're afraid. So these are hard things I don't have an answer for. But I pray for them. That's about it. To say, hey, like, God willing, that's you have the good discernment and good decision making.
But which is the most weird, or maybe if you can give an example to our viewers, a very weird case that you must have come across, or maybe a client must have reached out to you saying that if you can help me with this case, and later you found out that it was actually a fraud that was the client was trying to do.
So it's not really like what I have a lot is like I had this case. I just limit how much I talk details I consulted with, and the guy got really angry with me the other day. He had hired a lawyer that was an immigration lawyer to do his marriage green card case, and because of his history, he had to do this like extra paperwork to get the green card, but he didn't submit that. He just submitted a simple case without the extra paperwork, and the government didn't notice the issue that was in his case either, and it was approved. So he came to me because he's going to do some more immigration work, get citizenship and that. And I looked at him, I'm like, oh, they made a mistake. They should have filed the paperwork like this differently. Now, if the government finds out, they'll take away your green card. So you file for citizenship, they're going to look at this and then realize their error, even though they approved the case. And he's like, how does this lawyer and the government, they did it wrong and you're right? And they started getting angry at me like I'm trying to scam him or something. I'm like, if they make mistakes, they're doing million plus cases. So they make mistakes. They didn't catch that they approved your case incorrectly. You should have waited like a year and a half. It would have fixed itself out, but you filed too soon. So that was a problem. And I cited the laws, and he didn't understand it, saying I'm reading it wrong. I'm like, well, here's an email that breaks down all the laws. Go talk with other immigration attorneys, and if they think I'm wrong, leave me a bad review. And no bad review yet. So it's complicated. So a lot of times people make mistakes and they don't know what they're doing. And the government doesn't know what they're doing too, and they catch it later sometimes. But a lot of the issues with fraud are people just making mistakes. They're not understanding what's going on, filling stuff in incorrectly, not understanding, and it becomes a big problem. Like I was talking with a former embassy officer for China, and she was a Chinese woman, and she would go around the embassies in China, practicing with the Americans. She's American Chinese, but practicing the English, the Chinese language. So if you're going to do an embassy interview in your home country, the officers learn your language so they can speak in your language instead of in English. And what she saw is the Americans who are learning Chinese were using the words wrong. So they were asking people, do you have any immediate close relatives in the United States, like spouse, parents, or children? And the people had them, so they would have said yes. But the word they were using in Chinese was not close relative; it was distant relatives. So they're asking people, do you have any? Thought they're asking, do you have any close relatives? But they're asking, do you have any distant relatives? So the people were saying, no, I don't have any distant relatives. They're being honest, no distant relatives. And they were getting denied for fraud because they're like, oh, your parents are in the U.S. or your children are in the U.S. You lied to us. So a bunch of fraud happened until this one officer was sitting on an interview and I heard this guy saying the wrong word. And she's like, no, you're translating this wrong. You're asking distant relatives, not close relatives. So she's not being fraud. She's being honest. And then the light bulb went off. The officer, oh, I've been accusing everyone of fraud and denying all these cases because I don't speak the language correctly. So I'm more worried about this stuff, and it probably happens really all the time, which
Mhm.
is a disaster, as you imagine. So it's very sad to hear. Stuff about we got caught, it got fixed, but it's probably
Mhm.
she's not always there to help translate. So that's it happens.
I mean,
Yes.
but in a situation like that, what should the attorney do? I mean, should they reach out to
Most
cops?
people don't hire attorneys for these kind of cases because they say it's too expensive, or it's easy paperwork. I don't need to hire an attorney, so they can't do anything. Plus, attorney's not going to be there to catch this issue. So,
Mm.
and the government's not going to be telling us exactly what they thought the fraud was. So there's not much you could do other than you're screwed. Use bad language. Yeah, that's it. So. It's just it's really bad, yeah. So that's what, like, if we have more officers of fraud and more rules, it just creates more opportunity for these kind of mistakes to happen and catch the good people who are in these mistakes. So that's why it's no real solution. No, like a lot of people want immigration reform in the U.S., comprehensive immigration reform. It's impossible because every time they make one rule, they mess up 10 other things, and they go fix those 10 other things and make 100 other problems. So there's no real fix to it. I've studied this. I've tried really hard to create it myself and to put it out there. But every time I try to fix something in my head, it breaks another thing. So it's too
Mm.
much of a dynamic, fast moving thing to be able to really put rules around. So we're always going to have people lose out unfairly. And just like life,
Mhm.
some people are born rich and healthy, and some people are born poor and unhealthy, and bad parents, good parents. It's really it's just luck, and then just how you deal with it and say, okay, can't come to America, I'll go somewhere else, or I'll stay in my country, and it is what it is. Just that's about it. But it's always going to have problems. It's always going to have problems, these things.
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
So it comes back to luck then. Remember Rajni yesterday too, he
Yeah.
was talking about this.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well,
All
thank you
Mm.
right.
so much for
So
having me on. I do have to run right now, but I appreciate it. I'm glad we got a chance to get to know each other better today in the show and the previous one.
thank you so much, John. I mean, we can't thank you enough. It was really great having you and your insights really enlightening today.
You're
Absolutely.
welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
It's
you
great
so
to meet
much,
all you.
John. Yeah.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Have a great day. Bye bye. That was great. Rajni, would you like to take up any of these questions from our audience?
Okay, I think ZQ here says being too woke is getting people old. Take a nap, people. Yeah, nap is also it's Friday, so maybe take a nap and
That's a
wake
good
up tomorrow after a good sleep.
how he said.
Yeah, and he says except Elon, maybe. Yeah, I think except everyone who's in Trump's administration, so not just Elon.
Take a good nap.
Yeah. And I don't think so. If anyone from them is for, anyone from them, from these people who's in Trump's administration are woke at all. So,
But
okay.
yeah,
And
yeah, I think immigration attorneys are very busy because I think people are trying to, file their cases as soon as possible
mhm.
before
Yeah.
Trump joins in January.
Yeah,
So
and also
both
I
sides.
think I was just reading about it. I think the universities have also called the students. I think it was for India. Yeah, I think it was for India that the universities have also called the students from India because they were back home for their winter vacation. So they said before Trump's take back the office in January, you better come back. So they're also going to be back.
Looks
Um,
like they will miss out on their vacation home.
yeah.
In fact, most of the attorneys, they were also mentioning that if you want to have a settled and a simple life in US, then it's better to come back before 2025 so that, it will be safe and secure. Otherwise, you're definitely going to face a lot of challenges.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that's
Would
how
be-
different people are believing, but let's see what happens.
Right. I mean, we can't really say that until the time really comes because I'm not sure if it's really going to be that bad how people are projecting it. But I'm sure it's going to be good only. What do you think, Nipasa? Do you think it's going to be good, or what do you think?
I think it's going to be good. And just like John already mentioned, I think we will have to stay by the rules also, and just see that. I mean, how fast can changes happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's also another question. I mean, of course, Trump will join the office and all, but how fast will, I mean, whatever changes he wants, how fast are they going to
I mean,
happen?
it's not like that he's going to run after everyone, like,
Each
with a
and
stick or
everyone type of
yeah,
thing.
with a stick
Exactly.
or things like that. I mean, it's going to be
And
whatever
he
that
has,
he's going to do. It's going to be good for the country and good for the people. So people are
yes,
really scared because he's very strict and he's does what he says. So maybe they are scared like that. But I think only the illegal ones should be scared, not the legal ones. And I think it's going to be good.
me too, me too. I'm sure it's going to be good.
I
But
also
yeah,
agree.
looking at immigration frauds, I think this is also going to get lesser, hopefully. I mean, once Trump joins in, I don't know how, but
Right.
I hope that
And I
fraud
think
will
this is something that's
be
much
lesser.
needed.
Yes,
Right.
right. Right.
Absolutely.
So I think it was a good show today. We should wrap up. Anything you want to say, Rajni, before we leave? Maybe it would be great to know.
Nothing really, Sam and Nipasa. Again, it was great being here. Thank you so much for having me again. And I'm so glad that I got this chance to ask questions from John, and his insights were really helpful. And I hope that these scams and frauds get less. I'm not because I know it for a fact that it's not going to be completely it's not completely go away, but I hope that it's going to be less in 2025 and people are more responsible, more vigilant. So yeah, I think
More
that's it.
real,
More real,
more
right?
real. No,
And not just
no
the
more
people, and also
fake
the
things.
attorneys who are scamming people and scamming immigrants. Those phony
Exactly,
immigration attorneys, right?
Right, right.
exactly.
Okay, that's it from my side, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much, Rajni, for
much.
joining.
All right.
I
So
think yes. Yeah,
today we
Sam,
had,
go on.
yeah, I think today we had a great discussion and we talked everything about the immigration frauds, and it was really great having Attorney John as well and Nabasa also with you. I literally enjoyed, and with Rajni also. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much to our lovely viewers for also commenting us and participating in today's session. So, yeah, I would say that, always trust official sources. And if an offer seems too good to be true, then it probably might have some fishiness in this. So, yeah, guys, stay safe, stay smart, and always stay updated. And don't let the fraudsters take advantage of your dreams. So, yeah, that's all from my side, Napasa. Anything else that you would like to share with our viewers?
I would just say, immigration fraud is a complex issue and definitely has far-reaching consequences, even if not today, but soon in the future. All of these frauds, they do have to pay for their activities, right? And that way, I think, that being said, I think we just have to be vigilant, just like you mentioned. And it's so scary, John had mentioned that everything is in our fingertips nowadays. You don't have to really do your research so much. You just type in and it's all there. But then you know what to believe in, right? You have to do your extra research for that and
That's
just
how only they are going to
yeah,
get safe.
exactly, exactly. So educate yourself and report suspicious issues, activities. I think that's all we can say. And yes, whenever you are whenever there's a job offer or anything like that, if they're asking for money for that job, know that there's something fishy, report such activities. And yeah, I think that's it for now.
Absolutely. So I think, yeah, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. It was lovely having you, and today's session was really a very insightful one. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this session till the end. We'll definitely going to see you in the next one. Till then, take care and bye for now.
Absolutely, friends. Have a very fun Friday, happy weekend, and see you again on Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Daily Immigration Dose. And of course, till then, stay tuned on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show.